Hi, it's me, the guy who until making this video thought that the black square on Mormon missionaries' shirts was a miniature Book of Mormon sticking out of their pocket. But no, apparently they carry one of those, and the black square is a name tag. What can I say? I was in a balcony seat when I saw Book of Mormon, and as for real missionaries, I guess I always slammed my door in their faces too quickly to get a good enough look. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is a denomination of Christianity founded in the 19th century by American former treasure hunter Joseph Smith. Followers of the church are commonly referred to as Mormons. If you look into it, you'll find that Mormons have a lot of interesting beliefs and are expected to follow a lot of strict rules. Beliefs and rules that leave a lot of outsiders of the church, like myself, to the opinion that it's a glorified cult founded by a pathologically lying sex pest. But I feel bad saying that, because whether I like it or not, the LDS Church is something that to this day plays a huge part in the lives of its millions of followers. So it makes sense that, like any culture, Mormons would desire art that represents their unique experiences as members of the church. This was a fact that several independent filmmakers who also happen to be Mormons realized in the early 2000s, leading to a movement referred to as Mormon cinema, where a myriad of films made by Mormons for Mormons were independently produced and released. Films of various genres that tackled the very specific aspects of LDS culture, like serving a 2-year mission and the very strict rules of Mormon dating. Now, there were actually a staggering amount of films released as a result of this movement, and I struggled deciding which ones exactly to cover in this video. But I settled on one drama and one comedy that both seem to have played pretty significant roles in the beginning of the Mormon cinema movement and those films' respective sequels. So 2 Mormon movie duologies, 4 movies total. I know I could have done a big 15 movie retrospective on this whole phenomenon, but that's a lot of Mormon movies, guys. Let's see how it goes with these ones, and then I'll keep in mind that there are several more to potentially cover in future videos. But first, I'd like to thank my friends at Incogni for sponsoring this video. So you ever wonder how a random scammer got your exact phone number, or why you're suddenly flooded with spam emails? Well, I can tell ya, it's because your personal data is exposed everywhere online. There are companies called data brokers that collect and sell your private information without your consent. We're talking info like your full name, home address, phone number, financial details, even your social security number. It's a massive privacy crisis that it's easy to feel helpless against. But that is where Incogni comes in. See, Incogni tracks down and removes your personal information from multiple sites, including online directories, people search engines, and commercial databases. And the best part is that the process is fully automated. They do all the heavy lifting, sending out removal requests to hundreds of known data brokers. And since data can reappear on these sites over time, Incogni repeatedly removes it so you stay protected. And they go beyond automated removal. If you find your info on a specific site, you can use their custom removal feature. Just send them the link and a dedicated privacy expert will handle the rest. By cleaning up your digital footprint, Incogni drastically reduces your risk of scams, identity theft, and endless spam calls. Because at the end of the day, they can't harm you if they can't find you. Whether you want a standard plan for yourself or an unlimited family plan to protect your loved ones, Incogni has you covered. Plus, for my viewers, if you sign up using the link below or at incogni.com/courseguard, you'll get an exclusive deal on your Incogni plan. Protect your privacy in 3 easy steps. And thank you again to Incogni for sponsoring this video. So first, we have the indie drama credited with jump-starting the entire Mormon cinema movement, God's Army from the year 2000.
We got a deal going. For every cup of coffee he drinks, we get a free ride somewhere. What are we up to now?
67.
Which follows Elder Allen, a young member of the church serving his mission in Los Angeles. I've always found the idea of a Mormon mission really interesting because if I had to serve one, even if I sincerely believed in everything I was preaching, I just feel like my lizard brain instinct to avoid bothering people would make me so averse to trying to convert anyone that I don't think I could do it. So I'm weirdly impressed by Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, and really door-to-door salespeople of anything for being able to do that. Just never come to my house, please. Unless, of course, you're selling gamer girl bathwater. I don't know. The movie starts out depicting Alan as sort of a troubled bad boy struggling with his faith, so much so that he almost gives up and goes home on his first night, but he's convinced to stay when a fellow missionary insinuates it might be because he's gay.
Or maybe it's a morality problem.
Maybe he's in love with you.
Fine, I'll go back.
And then that conflict mostly disappears. Alan seems pretty on board with the church and his mission for the rest of the movie. That was easy. Alan's main companion, though, is named Elder Dalton, an older missionary who everyone in their group refers to as Pops. He's actually played by the movie's writer and director, Richard Dutcher. Richard Dutcher, I hardly know, but a lot of characters in this struggle with and some outright reject their faith. Like, one of the missionary reads anti-Mormon texts, at first just to be better equipped to ease potential converts' concerns with the church.
Why are you still reading that stuff? It's as bad as pornography.
How do you expect to defend yourself against these people? And these people are the enemy. Do you want to look stupid in front of them? You gotta know their weapons and their strategy.
But then after reading enough of it, he's somehow convinced their religion is built on lies and tragically abandons his mission. Then at another point, they're trying to convert this black couple who have completely understandable concerns about the church's racist past.
And what is this 1978 stuff? Why couldn't we hold the priesthood before then? My daddy was a good preacher. Why couldn't he have been a Mormon preacher?
Then near the end, we find out the reason Alan first struggled is because he was introduced to the faith by his stepdad, who was recently excommunicated from the church for touching kids.
He never touched me or anything. I'm grateful for that, you know.
And obviously, this is a Mormon movie, so all of these are meant to be examples of obstacles that you should work to overcome as a loyal member of the church. But seeing as I am not one, I really understand the plight of all the characters who struggle, and relate to the guy who leaves much more than I do all the other characters who ultimately stick with it. Even though I assume the movie was aiming for the opposite. Also, Pops performs a straight up miracle at the end. There's this character, Benny, who's disabled and he gets beat up by a gang off screen and thinks he might die, but then Pops performs a blessing that not only heals him, but also gives him the ability to walk.
You may rise from this bed and walk, and from this day forward you will walk. This is the blessing you desire. And this is the blessing that our Father in heaven desires for you.
And seeing this convinces several characters to finally convert. One guy even dramatically dumps out his coffee. Won't be needing that anymore. And it's just weird to me to include that in the movie when in real life, most people aren't going to witness a miracle like that to convince them. Also, the morning after that, Alan finds Pops dead. And to be fair, they did establish earlier that he was slowly dying from a brain tumor. But the fact that it's the day after he performs a miracle is the implication that it like used up all his remaining Force energy, like Rey and Kylo Ren. This movie also had a lot of supporting characters, like way too many for me to meaningfully connect with them all. So when it ends with Alan explaining in voiceover what happened to all of them.
Last I heard, Laura was going to Rick's college. Brother Rose never went back to drinking coffee. I recently heard that Carla did get baptized. Sandoval the Lamanite used the Navy to help him finish college.
It had me asking like, wait, who is that again? And why is it significant that that is their fate? Then it flashes forward and Alan is of course married to a blonde woman with a son whom he named Dalton after Pops. Overall, this movie was fine. I mean, if I can ignore that its message is basically that leaving the church is always bad and a tragedy, I liked most of the actors. Plus, part of me can't help but always root for low-budget movies that find success. And successful it was, earning $2.5 million on a $300,000 budget, and proving that there was a substantial audience for a Mormon-targeted film like this. Its success also led to a pseudo-sequel in 2005, God's Army 2: States of Grace.
No,
Y'all Mormons sure know how to party.
Which is set at the same Los Angeles placement as the first film, but focuses on entirely new characters. Mainly a new pair of missionaries, Elder Farrell and Elder Lozano. Now, I'd describe the first God's Army as overall pretty mellow. Like, the most intense scene was one where Elder Dalton has a seizure. But for the most part, the characters just discussed dramatic things from their past. So I was not prepared for how fucking crazy dramatic this sequel was. It starts out with the elders witnessing a gang shootout where several people die.
That guy's dead. I think that guy's dead.
But one man involved, Carl, is saved by Elder Lozano, who we later learn was in a gang himself. And this starts Carl down the path of joining the church and moving on from his criminal past. And throughout this whole plot of primarily Elder Lozano helping Carl out, I kept thinking of this clip from the Saved by the Bell reboot on Peacock.
Well, technically it's not a white savior thing because you're Mexican, so.
Thank you. No one ever talks about that.
Yeah.
Now, this one was also written by Richard Dutcher, who is a white guy, and so am I. So I could be wrong when I say that Carl does not feel like a well-written and true-to-life depiction of a troubled black man from Los Angeles to me. And I only say that because of every time he opens his mouth.
Like, I ain't never have no Mexican for no friend, no white boy for no friend, you know? Not no real friend. You know what I'm saying? How that work?
It works out all right.
Y'all don't end up, like, shooting each other or nothing like that?
Not very often.
That's all right, man.
Yeah. That's all right.
You're telling me if you're Mormon, you could be friends with other races without killing each other? I never thought that was possible. I don't know, it just kind of feels like the movie infantilizes him a little bit. So he gets baptized, fully joining the church, only to get the news that his younger brother Todd was killed by a rival gang member. This nearly causes Carl to return to his violent ways and get revenge on the killer, but he ultimately spares the guy, throwing his gun into the same ocean he was baptized. Aww. But believe it or not, the storyline with the other missionary, Elder Farrell, is where things get really crazy. So he befriends the girl who lives next door to him and Elder Lozano, an actress named Holly. And since they're not allowed to have women in the apartment, the two have conversations sitting on opposite sides of the doorway. It's actually really cute. And in one of these conversations, Holly reveals that when she first moved to LA, out of financial desperation, she starred in a few adult films.
I only did it a couple of times. I really needed the money, you know? I mean, who's gonna find out?
But one was discovered by one of her dad's co-workers, causing it to be spread throughout her entire small hometown, including her parents, who stopped talking to her as a result.
She asked me if I was proud of myself, and I said no, I wasn't. And she told me not to call anymore. My own mother.
And in my opinion, this scene was genuinely really well written by Richard Dutcher and well performed by Holly's actress Rachel Emmers. It does a good job of highlighting how adult films exist in a sort of gray area of consent because you never really know how comfortable the participants are. And yeah, credit where it's due, this was just a really great scene. But Farrell, of course, assures her that God still loves her, and that's all that really matters.
Well, God probably thinks I'm a big whore too.
No, he doesn't. He loves you just as much as he did when you were a baby. I know so.
Whoa, to be clear, I think what you did was disgusting. God may forgive you, but that doesn't mean I do. No, they actually get so close they end up sleeping together, off screen of course, which Farrell reveals to Elder Lozano when he breaks down over breakfast the next day. This results in him being discharged, which he says his parents will be ashamed of. And I thought that'd be it, he has to go home. But then Lozano finds Farrell having slit his wrists in a suicide attempt.
Oh, get an ambulance, get an ambulance!
Get him in the van, come on.
Talk to me, open your eyes! Open your eyes! Don't do this, please, come on!
He ultimately survives, of course, and is reminded by Holly that God still loves him, which is nice. I'm glad the movie at least emphasized that he shouldn't have done that. But it, of course, doesn't acknowledge that the culture he was raised in is what caused him to feel so ashamed by something that was completely natural and consensual. I can't lie, though. The subplot was pretty well done dramatically. I was invested, and every reveal from her past to them sleeping together to his suicide attempt, I legitimately didn't see coming. I did not expect that I would be shouting, "What?" out loud several times while watching a Mormon movie alone, but during this one I did. Really though, there's very little that's specifically Mormon about this movie. Mostly it just feels like a Christian movie. Like, the third subplot follows Louis, a homeless man the elders bring to stay with them. Turns out he's a former Pentecostal preacher, and he's ultimately gifted a vacant Baptist church by the widow of its late preacher.
What religion are you anyway?
I'm Pentecostal.
At least you're a Christian.
Okay, implying what? That at least he's not turning it into a mosque? But yeah, he turns it into a Pentecostal church, and that's still viewed as a victory among the missionaries. To me, that was surprisingly open-minded for a Mormon movie. The ending of this movie was also very broadly Christian and very weird. Holly visits Farrell in the hospital and repeats to him what he once said to her, that Jesus
loves you just as much as he did when you were a baby.
Then later, the day he's leaving town, everyone goes to this live nativity display, and the Mary then just hands the baby to Louis, who then passes it around to the other characters. Mary, what are you doing? Haven't you seen Darren Aronofsky's Mother? I guess not, because it's 2005. But the baby ends up with Farrell, who breaks down at the sight of it, and then everyone kneels, including the members of the nativity scene. But like, they don't know what's been going on with Farrell. As far as they know, he was just a random audience member who was handed a baby and then started crying. Guess it's supposed to be touching, but it's just weird. Overall though, even though this movie had some weird moments and problematic messaging, I have to admit a decent amount of it was well written, performed, and had me genuinely invested. So now, moving away from Mormon dramas, following the success of the original God's Army, film graduates from Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, Kurt Hale and Dave Hunter founded Hailstorm Entertainment, a production company operating out of Utah, with the goal of creating more films to be released specifically for LDS audiences, that much like God's Army would rely on inside knowledge of the church to fully appreciate. And the first film out of the studio was a comedy released in 2002 titled The Singles Ward. Now apparently singles wards are local specialized congregations of the LDS church attended exclusively by unmarried adults, and they try to create an environment tailored around like dating and courtship. So they can finally get married so they can feel the touch of another human being. I mean, have children and transfer to a family ward. Now this movie follows John. John is a former member of the church, having lost faith after his wife left him. And there's this montage of him committing sins for the first time that includes him renting a bunch of VHS tapes. And seeing that, I was like, whoa, this is gonna be a pretty raunchy joke for a Mormon movie. He's renting porn? But then it turns out, no, they're just R-rated movies.
Okay, we got Nightmare on Elm Street, parts 1 through 5, Die Hard, parts 1 through 3. Let's not forget Halloween 12.
And I can't tell if that was a deliberate fake out on the movie's part or not. Because if so, that's pretty funny. John works as a full-time stand-up comedian, and here's the thing about that. The movie is set in Provo, Utah, the medium-sized, primarily Mormon city that's home to Brigham Young University. And I could be wrong, but I doubt they have a flourishing enough stand-up comedy scene for that to be your full-time career. Especially since he primarily performs in bars, so to the few non-Mormons in Provo, I just don't see that being sustainable. Also, am I wrong, or does the few non-Mormons in Provo sound like it could be a great sitcom? All right, twist my arm, I'll write the pilot. This movie also does something that most movies featuring characters who are stand-up comedians do, where to show that they're such a talented comedian, they have crowds laughing really hard at material that doesn't fully deserve it because it was written by a screenwriter, and in this case, a Mormon one.
A lot of guys, hide their girly magazines after they get married? No, not me. No, I never had any of them to hide. You know what magazines I hid? Popular mechanics. Yeah, that's right. I didn't want my wife knowing I could fix stuff and have that ruining my weekend.
However, John remains friends with guys who haven't left the church, and one night while dropping them off at the local singles ward, he falls for a new member named Cammie. And knowing she only dates Mormons, he starts participating in the ward and attending church again. At first just to get closer to her, but eventually he also gets back his faith, obviously. So this is a pretty common plot in comedy movies, right? Someone pretending to be something they're not in order to get something they want. But in most of those movies, a lot of the humor comes from the character not knowing how the person they're pretending to be is supposed to act. You know, silly Jack Black, that's not how teachers behave. No shade to School of Rock, that's one of the greatest movies of all time. But in this movie, as an ex-Mormon, John knows exactly how to act like one. There aren't many humorous moments of him misunderstanding the culture. Which is fine, I just feel like it might have made for less comedic opportunities than if he was just a convert. More so than the God's Army movies, I feel like I missed out on a lot of the humor and relatability of this not being a Mormon. Like, John will often break the fourth wall and be like, "Don't you hate it when the bishop comes around to do his weekly taint inspection?"
It's like when a member of the bishopric comes up to you and he puts his hand on your back and wants to meet with you. You know it's about a calling, and you're trapped.
And it's like, no, I don't know what that's like. But it's fine, this movie is for Mormons, and I'm sure they would relate to it. The singles ward holds these parties in the movie, and I just find it funny that there's obviously no drugs, alcohol, and nobody's hooking up. So it's just a bunch of full-grown adults partying like middle schoolers. They even have a gag where it's revealed that a high school girl snuck in.
Don't tell anyone, but I'm here with my older sister. I'm still a Maya maid.
But it's like, why does that even matter? Nothing dangerous could befall her there. Then again, I guess it's not unheard of for a full-grown Mormon man to pursue an underage girl. Their founder, for example. I noticed they included a token black guy in the ward.
You're acting like people from Southern California that come to Utah and see snow for the first time.
One person from Utah going to Southern California and seeing a black guy for the first time.
Right?
You gotta bump this for that great joke that I just made. There's also one nerdy guy, DeVerl, who keeps making moves on women and getting curved. But it's like most of the guys in this Mormon singles ward are pretty dorky. I don't know why he's portrayed as especially undesirable. Now, I assumed this running gag would be paid off in one of two ways. Either he ends up with a girl as nerdy as him, or with like a super hot girl and nobody can believe he pulled her. And it seemed like I was right on the money when he started cuddling with a girl with headgear.
I think we met in the pre-existence.
But that wasn't all. We'll get back to it. In one scene, someone actually proposes putting on God's Army, which came out 2 years before this.
We got God's Army!
I like that one too!
Gosh, are you kidding? I was so offended I walked out. That scene where they took the picture of the missionary in the bathroom?
What are you talking about? I got one just like in my mission scrapbook.
And wanting to know what they were referencing there is actually what caused me to watch the God's Armies and include them in this video. But yeah, there's an incredibly tame scene in the first God's Army where a guy's on the toilet. But I wouldn't be surprised if there were Mormons at the time who were actually offended by that. And because I watched this before God's Army, I didn't clock until editing that in this very scene, Richard Dutcher, Pops himself, makes a cameo.
We're watching a movie. Do you want to come in?
Oh, what movie?
God's Army?
You know, those toilet scenes are kind of offensive. Thanks.
So things start going well between John and Cammie until she comes to see him perform at the hive of scum and villainy that is the Provo bar. And at first, knowing she's there, he makes jokes about, like, smokers.
Take Marlboro cigarettes, for instance. For every pack you smoke, you get these little coupons called miles. I don't know why they don't use a term a little more conducive to smoking, like tumors or something.
That Cammie is a fan of, but when the bar's other clientele of smoking sinners ain't laughing, John, against his better judgment, starts making jokes about Mormons.
I recently finished doing a rated X Mormon film. Yeah, but there was no sex, strictly guilt.
And these very tame jokes leave Cammie deeply offended and in tears.
Is it the Mormon stuff? Cammie, those are just jokes.
And that makes it okay?
So, okay. Two things. One is that, again, he is a stand-up comedian in Provo, Utah. Of course he's gonna talk about Mormons on stage to some extent. That's gotta be like the comedic elephant in the room there, no? And second, this movie is made by Mormons and pokes fun at Mormons. And John here is also basically a Mormon at this point, so can't he poke fun at Mormons too? I guess it's just surprising to learn that these are the movie's examples of jokes about Mormons that go way too far.
I did a Mormon adaptation of a very popular musical, you might have heard of it. It was called Seven Brides for One Brother.
So done with him, Cammy decides to go on a mission which before she had been debating. And a heartbroken John nearly hooks up with a sinful bartender who smokes and drinks, but ultimately leaves, realizing he wants not just Cammy, but God back in his life. So he tries to go to stop her at the airport, which I'm sure was already a tired trope in 2002, but I don't know, maybe as Mormons, the writers hadn't seen many of the previous PG-13 movies featuring it. He confesses his regret, but she decides to still go through with her mission.
Look, pal, you want to get married? Try a singles ward.
But then the movie flashes forward to after she got back to reveal that her and Jonathan are married. And also that all John's friends got kind of randomly paired up with the other women supporting characters out of nowhere. But I guess that kind of is the expected outcome of a singles ward, right? Then it has a very similar ending to the first God's Army, where it gives epilogues to the movie's many supporting characters. Characters who I again didn't retain many specific details about, so these meant nothing. Except for DeVerl, the nerd guy. Here they show he ended up with a super hot woman. So I guess they just wanted to do both potential payoffs, but what happened to the girl with the headgear? Hope she found someone else, I guess. Overall, even though a lot of this movie's humor didn't resonate with me as I didn't relate to it or understand all the Mormon in-jokes, it was still nice to see that Mormons can sometimes be self-aware about the stranger aspects of their culture and poke a little fun at themselves. As long as they don't go too far. 7 brides for one brother. What was he thinking? So it took 5 years, but eventually a sequel with the same creative team titled The Singles Second Ward was released in 2007.
I had an old college roommate that tried his hand at Hollywood, but with one rejection after another, he finally left, seething with bitterness for those who had found their success.
What did he wind up doing?
Movie critic.
So this one begins with all the characters from the first movie reuniting, and this scene made me realize that the movie's gonna have big legacy sequel energy. Like for years, you've no doubt rewatched our iconic beloved first movie countless times, and now, these characters who have become such a big part of your life are finally back for another adventure. And maybe that was the case with the first movie for a lot of Mormons. But for me, who first watched it like 2 days before this one, and not long before that learned that it even existed, made the "can you believe that we're back?" energy of this movie feel a little cocky, I guess. Also similar to many legacy sequels, this one unfortunately felt like a mostly unnecessary rehash of its predecessor. This time we follow Christine, a recent convert to the church and new member of the Singles Ward, as she falls in love with one of the supporting characters from the first movie, Dallin.
Dallin Martin.
No, not Darren or Alan. Dallin. A joke brought to you by someone named Justice. But they're both practicing Mormons, so where's the conflict come in? Well, Christine's parents fly into Provo for the wedding. And not only are they not Mormon, but they're shallow, rich, and divorced. As evidenced by the mom having remarried to a rich elderly guy hoping to get his inheritance, and the dad being engaged to a young attractive woman who's only interested in him for his money. I thought that was kind of funny. One big plot contrivance though is that all 8 people stay at Dallin's parents' house for the week of the wedding. And it's like, I feel if Christine's parents were so high maintenance, they would have gotten a hotel. In fact, they do later. But I guess everyone staying together at first offers more opportunities for hijinks. Most of the humor in this one that wasn't just callbacks to the first movie was just more Mormon in-jokes that I didn't get. Like, I'm pretty sure they reference one of the other Hailstorm Entertainment movies released between the first Singles Ward and this one.
Hey, I had this dream about you and I. I just got home from my mission, and you were like this super bad influence on me. I had long hair, and like this dog bit me, and I fell into the pool. We were in jail. It was crazy. You should make it into a movie.
That probably wouldn't work.
Maybe one day I'll watch all these others to learn what that was about, but today is not that day. Then, during the inevitable scene in the third act where Dallin is running to win Christine back, these three random guys give him thumbs ups of encouragement and Dallin reacts all starstruck. Now, I assumed that was a cameo from some obscure Mormon band that I wouldn't be familiar with. But no, they explain later in the movie that these guys were the three Nephites.
Oh boys, Dallin went and did it. Yeah, I even heard it had a little help from the three Nephites. Seriously?
Who are apparently characters from Mormon folklore, said to be three ancient disciples of Jesus blessed with immortality who still roam the earth today helping out Mormons. I legitimately feel that a movie produced and released exclusively in Bangladesh would have less culture-specific jokes that I don't understand than this does. However, I did catch one joke in this that I wouldn't have before starting work on this video. See, there's this meta subplot where John from the first movie is shooting a movie based on his experience from the first Singles Ward. And in one scene, they're brainstorming potential titles for sequels based on other couples from their ward.
Zack and Tiffany, Volume 1, The Journey. Zack and Tiffany, States of Grace.
Ah, that's what the second God's Army is called. I honestly hate that I understood that. It's like I'm becoming one of them. Yeah, it was a clip-on. Ultimately, there's some forced third act drama where Christine's parents are offended to learn they won't be able to attend the true wedding in the temple as they're not Mormons. But they, of course, quickly make peace with it, and it's even implied at the end that they might get remarried and stop living in sin. Interesting, though, that the movie's solution wasn't them joining the church, but just them accepting that they couldn't be part of the ceremony. Which is something that I noticed about most of these movies that I watched from the Mormon cinema movement. See, a lot of the other Christian movies I've watched feel like their ultimate goal is always to either justify their viewers' more controversial beliefs, or to guilt or scare non-Christian viewers into converting. But refreshingly, with maybe the exception of States of Grace a little, those didn't really feel like the goals of any of these movies. It felt like all the creative teams behind these cared about was entertaining members of the LDS Church with stories and humor they could relate to. And I can't really get too mad about that. Despite how much I may disagree with their beliefs, there are still millions of Mormons, and any group that big kinda deserves to have media that represents them, I think. Plus, even though I wasn't especially entertained by any of these at face value, the Singles Ward movies specifically were interesting to watch, almost like observing wild animals in their natural habitat. How do Mormons act when they think they're not being observed by outsiders? And the answer is strange, but mostly harmless, as long as you can ignore small moments like this one in the second Singles Ward.
People tend to cast dispersions upon people in this town who have younger siblings who get married before they get married. And I don't think I have to say it, but I want to put this baby to bed right now. I am not, okay? I am not!
Alan, we know you're not.
Thank you.
He means gay. Thank you again to Incogni for sponsoring this video. Remember, you can sign up at the link below or at incogni.com/courseguard for an exclusive deal on your Incogni plan.